I'm 105 years old, and this morning I woke up alone. I made my coffee alone, and I sat in this chair to wait for someone to come and ask me what no one ever asks me. My name is Arthur, I'm 105 years old, and I was an electrician for 43 years in this same city, where I was born, where I got married, and where I've buried almost everyone I ever loved. I have 3 kids, 7 grandkids, and 2 great-grandkids who don't really know what to do with. A great-grandfather who still beats them at checkers and remembers things they haven't lived through and hopefully never will. My wife, Eleanor, left me 9 years ago. The doctor who warned me at 55 that my heart was going to kill me before I hit 70 has been dead for 12. Coworkers who had years on me went before I did. Lifelong friends, lifelong neighbors. Even a few lifelong enemies, because I had those too, went first. I'm still right here in this chair with my 6 a.m. coffee and my tomatoes out in the yard. And I know exactly what you want to know. Everybody wants the exact same thing when they find out how old I am. The first thing they ask without fail is, what do I eat? What do I eat? How much do I sleep? Do I take supplements? Do I walk? Do I work out? Do I skip the booze? Do I pray? They want the list. The reporters who have come to interview me, they ask for the list. The doctors who check me over every now and then ask for the list, just so they can run and tell their bodies like it's some massive breakthrough. The younger neighbors, the ones in their 70s, they ask for the list with that look in their eye, like they're waiting for the combination to a safe. I give it to them because the list exists and it's real. But if I just stop at the list, I'd be lying to you. At my age, I don't have time left for lies. Here is the list. Eggs in the morning, almost always fried in regular old oil. Good meat a couple of times a week, none of that processed junk they sell in bright plastic wrappers. Seasonal vegetables, which is the only kind of vegetable that makes any sense to eat, because it actually tastes like something. Real bread, not that fluffy stuff that feels like cotton. Water, black coffee, no sugar, twice a day. And yeah, a little wine with Sunday dinner, because Eleanor used to make roast beef on Sundays, and roast beef without a little wine on the side is just sad. No pills, no supplements, none of those powders they sell in plastic tubs with giant promises written in tiny print. I never denied myself a slice of cake at a birthday party, or a hot dog on the 4th of July, or a piece of chocolate after dinner when I felt like it. The people who turn food into a religion, the ones who punish themselves for every single bite that strayed from the plan, the ones who sat at the table chewing on guilt, almost all of them suffered way more than they lived. In my experience, unnecessary suffering wears you down faster than any bad food ever could. Listen to me carefully, because this is the most important thing I'm going to say. If you think that's the secret, you've got it completely backward. There was a guy in my neighborhood named Thomas, a retired doctor, a smart, well-read guy who dedicated his whole life to figuring out how the human body works. He spent his whole life obsessing over what he ate, his annual checkups, his blood levels, his percentages. When you asked him how he was doing, he answered with numbers. Cholesterol is at this, blood pressure is at that, triglycerides are down, kidneys are running at whatever percent. He lived staring at numbers, at charts, at a notebook where he wrote down every single thing he swallowed for 20 years. He checked out at 78. His wife, Margaret, told me at the funeral, with that raw honesty that only comes from deep grief, that he spent his last 10 years terrified. Constant fear, fear every single day, fear that something was going to break, fear that the numbers would change, fear of dying. I kept thinking about that as I walked back home. I asked myself if that was actually living, or if it was just managing not to die quite yet. Because there's a difference, a massive difference. And that difference has taken up a lot of real estate in my head during all these years I've spent thinking about these things. When I retired at 68, it didn't take me long to figure out that retirement can kill you faster than any disease if you don't know what to do with it. 43 years waking up before the sun. 43 years having something waiting for me every single morning. Even if that something was just wiring a building down the street, or fixing a blown fuse at a factory, or staring at a workbench piled high with backlog. 43 years where the day had a shape right from the jump, and then suddenly, nothing. They gave me a gold watch at the farewell dinner. The guys clapped for me. They told me I could finally rest, that I'd earned it, that this was my time. So I sat down to rest. I almost died from it, and not from any sickness, from the emptiness. Eleanor was the one who called it out, because Eleanor was like that. Straight as an arrow, no sugarcoating, no beating around the bush. She told me on a winter morning, without even raising her voice, while I was sitting in this exact chair staring at the wall. She said, "Arthur, you've been in that chair for 3 months, and you're starting to look like a piece of furniture. Go out and do something, man. You're still breathing." Yeah, exactly like that. It pissed me off, the way it always did when she was right, which was pretty much all the time. The body knows when it doesn't have anywhere to be anymore. I can't explain it with medical terms because I'm no doctor, but I've seen it way too many times to ignore it. When the body realizes there is absolutely nothing waiting for it tomorrow, it starts packing up, preparing to go nowhere. It's like it says, well, if we're all done here, let's shut the lights off. It shuts down slowly, no rush, but it shuts down. I had neighbors, guys I worked with, who retired full of big plans, and 2 years later they were ghosts of themselves. I saw it in Eleanor's own brother-in-law, Henry, a strong, hard-working guy who spent his whole life on his feet. He retired in March in perfect health, and by October he was in the hospital, without the doctors finding a single concrete thing wrong with him. He just turned off from the inside. He ran out of reasons to get out of bed early, and his body took notes. I got saved by the garden. One day, I don't know exactly when, because those first few months of retirement just bleed together in my head like one long afternoon. I walked out to the yard without a plan, and I saw the tomatoes were dry. So I watered them. I saw weeds choking the peppers. I pulled them. I noticed the dirt was packed hard in one corner, so I grabbed the hoe and broke it up. By the time I looked up, it was 2 in the afternoon. I'd been out there since 9 in the morning. My hands were black with dirt up to the elbows. My knees ached from kneeling in the soil. My back was stiff, and I was hungrier than I'd been in weeks. It was the first time in 3 months I felt like the day was actually good for something. Eleanor was standing at the kitchen door when I walked in. She didn't say a word, just looked at me. But I knew that look after so many years together. It was the look of someone who had been waiting, not for an hour or a week, but a long, long time, and finally saw what they were waiting for pull into the driveway. From that day on, the garden was mine in a way it hadn't been before. Before, it was just a corner of the yard where stuff grew. After, it became the place where I had a job to do. That difference, as small as it sounds, changed the whole game. With the garden came other things. The way it usually happens when a man starts moving again. Came the morning walks, which started just down to the corner, got longer as the years went by, and then got shorter again, depending on what my legs would allow, but they always happened. Came the Thursday card games with Frank and Joe. Neither of them are around anymore. I miss them terribly when they left, and I still miss them now, but for years, they gave me more life than any vitamin I could have swallowed. Came the habit of putting a record on after dinner, which Eleanor always wanted to do, and I always put off because I'd come home dead tired from work and could never find the time. Came the habit of sitting in this chair at 4 in the afternoon, just to watch the light hit that window. It always comes in exactly the same way, at the exact same angle, with that same golden color in the winter, which is my absolute favorite. Little things, things that might sound ridiculous or totally pointless to a 40-year-old. But they were reasons. They were proof that tomorrow wasn't just going to be another day I managed not to die, but a day where I actually had something to do. And that difference, I'm telling you, is the single most important thing I figured out in 105 years on this earth. I've watched people in perfect physical shape check out early. I've watched people who did everything right, who ate exactly by the book, got their 8 hours of sleep, followed every doctor's order with military discipline, just fade away. And I've watched people stick around way longer than they were supposed to. People who, in the eyes of any medical expert, had absolutely no right to still be breathing. The difference, the only constant difference I've been able to track across all these years, had nothing to do with what was on their plate or how they slept. It came down to whether they had something waiting for them the next morning. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be important. It doesn't have to change the world. Just something that pulls you forward when you open your eyes. Now comes the part that's the hardest for me to say, the part it took me the longest to be willing to talk about. When Eleanor died, I was 96, and I know exactly what you're thinking. At 96, a man is supposed to be ready for these things. He's supposed to have made peace with the idea of losing the people he loves. He's supposed to know how to let go. Well, I wasn't ready. And take it from me, a guy who has been on this earth for 105 years and lost more people than most folks will ever meet in a lifetime. Nobody is ready for the person they've slept next to for 58 years to just vanish. Nobody. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how much loss you've swallowed before. Every single time, it feels like the first time. The morning after her funeral, I woke up at 6 out of pure habit, because the body doesn't understand grief. It just keeps doing what it's always done. I walked into the kitchen, and I set 2 mugs on the table. I did it without thinking, the way I'd done for decades, an automatic reflex that completely bypassed my brain. It just happened. When I sat down and looked at those 2 mugs, I froze. One for me, one for nobody. I sat there for a stretch of time I couldn't even measure. The light shifted across the kitchen tiles, the way light does in the morning. And I just kept staring at that mug, watching it get cold, knowing nobody was going to drink it. I managed to drink mine. I forced it down, but I couldn't bring myself to dump hers in the sink. I left it sitting right there, and I just stayed with it in the quiet. I don't know how much time passed. I just know that by the time the world snapped back into focus, the kitchen had a different light, the mug I poured for her was stone cold, and my lungs were still pulling in air. The morning hadn't waited for me. The hours just kept marching on without asking for permission, the way they always do, the way they always have. At some point, without making any conscious choice, I stood up. Not because I wanted to. Not because some comforting thought suddenly washed over me. Not because anything made sense. I got up because the tomatoes were still dry, and that was a concrete thing I could fix. One small, specific thing waiting for me out in the yard. I walked out to the garden. I pulled a couple of weeds that hadn't done anything wrong, but they were there and they needed pulling. I went back inside. I called my son David, who lives up in Seattle, not because I had any grand wisdom to share, but because I needed to hear the voice of someone who actually knew me. I didn't say much. I asked about the kids. He asked me how I slept. I said, fine, even though it was a lie. We talked for 20 minutes about absolutely nothing of consequence. And in those 20 minutes of pointless conversation, I found just enough of a reason to make it to the next day. Just that. Most days, you don't need more than that. Enough of a reason to reach tomorrow. You don't have to figure out the grand meaning of your entire life. You just need to find one reason for tomorrow. I spent the next few months learning how to live in a house that was suddenly packed with way too much silence. I'm not going to tell you it was easy, because that's garbage. And like I said, I'm out of time for lies. It was brutal. There are days even now, 9 years later, where I miss her so hard it knocks the wind out of me. Moments when I put a record on after dinner, the way we used to, and the silence where she's supposed to be is louder than the music. Mornings where I still accidentally pull out 2 mugs. But every single day, I found something. Some days it was the garden. Some days it was a phone call with the grandkids. Other days it was just waiting for 4 o'clock to watch the light hit the glass. Which is such a tiny thing, it's almost embarrassing to admit, but it was enough, plenty of times, when there was nothing bigger on the menu. My kids don't come around much. I get it, and I don't hold it against them. They have their own lives, their jobs, their own messes, their own fears. But a few months ago, after David told me on the phone that he really wanted to visit, but work was a nightmare, and he definitely calmed the second things calmed down, I told him what needed to be said. I said, David, I'm 105 years old. I'm not asking you to move in, and I'm not asking for every weekend. I'm telling you that if you wait for things to calm down to come see me, there is a very real chance that by the time you show up, we won't be having this conversation. Things don't calm down. That's a lesson you learn with time. Things never calm down. They just get traded out for other things. There is always something. If you wait for there to be nothing, you're going to wait forever. He came that weekend. He caught the red eye on Friday and stayed until Sunday. We sat out on this patio both afternoons, drinking coffee, no rush, no cell phones on the table. He told me things he'd been carrying around for years that I never knew. I told him things I should have told him when he was 40, and I still had the energy and a sharp mind to say them right. We both cried a little, which isn't that crazy between a father and son if enough time has passed without them actually talking. Now he calls every week, every single week, like clockwork. Having people around, people who are waiting for you, people who give a damn if you show up. It's not a luxury or a weakness or some sentimental old man nonsense. It's the mortar that keeps the bricks together. I know because I've tested it on my own skin for decades. The years where I actually had someone to talk to. Someone who asked how I was doing and actually wanted the answer. Someone who gave a damn that I was in the room. Those were better years than the ones I spent alone with my perfectly healthy habits and my perfectly weeded garden. Loneliness isn't just feeling sad. Loneliness is a heavy physical weight that settles into your tissue the exact same way the cold settles deep into your bones in January. The body, which is a hell of a lot smarter than we are, tracks it. It stores it up. Since I'm laying all my cards on the table, which is the only way to play at my age, I need to say this too, even though nobody ever says it because it doesn't make for a pretty story. Part of making it this far was pure dumb luck. My dad made it to 91. My mom hit 87. The engine I was born with had a durability I didn't earn. They handed it down to me without even knowing they were doing it. I could sit here and tell you that my long life is 100% discipline, grit, good habits, and smart choices made at the right time. It would sound fantastic, but it would be a half-truth. And half-truths are the most dangerous kind of lie because there's just enough reality in there to make you swallow it and stop digging for the rest. This morning I woke up at 6, just like always. I made the coffee, just like always. I walked out to the yard for a minute. I can't bend down like I used to. I can't kneel in the dirt the way I did 20 years ago. But I can still look. I can still check on the plants. I can still feel the morning air cut through the yard before the sun heats up the pavement. I put on an old record. I sat in this chair. I looked at the empty chair across from me that's been empty for 9 years. And I said, "Good morning," exactly like I've done every single morning since Eleanor left. That's the reality. That's my life at 105. It's not dramatic. It's not a movie. It's not the life of a guy who cracked a secret code that nobody else knows. It's the life of a man who figured out a few crucial things way too late and is willing to say them out loud just in case they help somebody who still has time to use them. Eat right, yeah. Move your body every day, even if it's just a little bit, even if it's just down to the corner. Get the sleep you need. Take care of yourself. All of that matters, and it would be a lie to tell you it doesn't. But above all else, find yourself a reason for tomorrow. Just one. Make it small. Whatever it is, whatever you can reach right now in this exact moment of your life. A garden, a phone call, a game of cards, a good book, the way the light hits a window at a certain hour. Something that guarantees tomorrow isn't just another day you manage to cheat the grave, but a day where you actually have something to do, something to look forward to, something that needs you even just a little bit. Make the call you need to make. Go see the person you need to see. Say the thing you've been choking down for years. Don't wait for the stars to align, because the stars never align. And while you're standing around waiting, the clock is only ticking in one direction. Don't spend your entire life getting ready to live it. That is my biggest regret, the thing I did for way too many years. Waiting until I had more time, more money, more peace and quiet, more clarity. Waiting for the kids to grow up, for work to slow down, for the absolute perfect moment to arrive. The perfect moment doesn't show up on your doorstep. You are the one who decides that this moment, the one you are standing in right now, is good, enough to dive all the way into. I've spent 105 years inside my life, with all the good, the losses, the massive mistakes, the things I nailed, and the things I wrecked. With the years that felt totally full, and the years that felt completely hollow. With Eleanor by my side for 58 years, and with her empty chair staring back at me for the last 9. And this afternoon, when the light cuts through that window at exactly 4 o'clock, the way it does every single day, I'll be sitting right here watching it. That's what I have. Educational statement and disclaimer. The following narrative, reflection, and commentary are created and shared strictly for educational, motivational, and inspirational purposes. The personal perspectives, insights, and life lessons presented here reflect a humanistic philosophical outlook on life and well-being. This content does not constitute professional medical, psychological, financial, or lifestyle advice. Listeners and readers should always consult with qualified professionals regarding their personal health, medical regimens, or emotional well-being. When we look at a life that spans over a century, our immediate instinct is to search for a formula, a strict regimen of diet and exercise that might grant us the same extraordinary longevity. We desperately ask for the list of specific foods, the hours of sleep, and the exact habits, mistakenly believing that longevity is merely a mechanical puzzle to be solved through military discipline. Arthur's profound journey reminds us that prioritizing a physical checklist while ignoring the human soul is a tragic misstep that robs us of our true vitality. True living is not found in obsessively managing our numbers, tracking biological charts, or living in a state of perpetual fear of decay, but rather in discovering a meaningful, deeply felt reason to open our eyes every single morning. When we strip away our daily routines and lifelong careers, the sudden vacuum can quietly shut us down from the inside out. If we lack a purpose to pull us forward into the day, the human body instinctively senses when it no longer has anywhere to go, and without a destination, it simply begins to turn off the lights. Whether it is tending to a small patch of dry tomatoes in the garden, hearing the warm voice of a child over the telephone, or simply waiting for the afternoon light to hit a window pane at a perfect golden angle, these tiny anchors tether us to existence. Grief and profound loss will inevitably break our hearts, and no amount of time or age prepares us for the agonizing silence left behind by those we have cherished for decades. Yet, the morning never waits for our sorrow. The hours march on, and our lungs keep drawing air, gently urging us to find even the smallest, most ordinary task to ground us back in the present moment. We often squander our precious days waiting for life to finally calm down, foolishly anticipating a perfect future alignment of time and circumstances that never actually arrives. The brutal truth of the human experience is that external chaos never truly dissipates. It merely changes form while the clock relentlessly ticks away in one single direction. We must stop spending our entire existence getting ready to live, and instead choose to dive completely into the messy, beautiful, and highly imperfect moment we are standing in right now. From my personal perspective, the true beauty of human existence lies not in the mere quantity of years we manage to accumulate, but in the depth of awareness and love we bring to each passing moment. We live in a world increasingly obsessed with optimization, tracking biological metrics, and trying to hack our way toward an elusive immortality, often forgetting that a long life completely devoid of deep human connection is merely an empty shell. Arthur's story serves as a gentle yet piercing reminder that our vulnerability is not a design flaw to be cured, but the very canvas upon which our inner resilience and grace are painted. When we courageously embrace the inevitability of loss, we inherently deepen our appreciation for the fragile, beautiful relationships that sustain us right now. It is incredibly easy to become passive observers of our own lives, hiding behind the endless excuse of busyness, while pushing our deepest emotional and spiritual needs into an uncertain tomorrow. However, genuine human fulfillment requires us to actively step into the arena of our daily lives, taking full responsibility for the love we cultivate and the small purposes we create. True wealth is always found in the simple, unhurried spaces where we look into another person's eyes and truly listen without the modern distraction of a ticking clock or a digital screen. Every single morning offers us a profound choice: to either succumb to the paralyzing weight of past regrets or to find one small, beautiful reason to move forward. Compassion for ourselves and for those around us must become our ultimate guiding principle if we wish to heal the deep, silent epidemic of modern loneliness that quietly erodes our well-being. We must learn to celebrate our quiet victories like a thriving plant or a heartfelt phone call, recognizing them as the essential mortar holding our fragile lives together. No matter how deeply we have been wounded by grief or isolated by circumstance, our capacity to give and receive love remains an inexhaustible wellspring of renewal and hope. Let us actively choose to stop waiting for conditions to become absolutely flawless before we allow ourselves to experience genuine joy, inner peace, and mutual understanding. Life is happening entirely in the present, a precious and fleeting gift that demands our full attention, our deepest courage, and our completely unshielded hearts. By shifting our focus from merely surviving to actively contributing to the warmth and comfort of the world around us, we elevate the collective human experience. Ultimately, a life well lived is simply a beautiful tapestry woven from small, intentional choices to show up, to care deeply, and to embrace tomorrow with completely open arms.